The Force is light and full of shadows.
Before we dive in, check the link in the description if you want exclusive timelines, members-only videos you won't find on YouTube, all on our Patreon. The wind on Ilum does not blow. It sculpts. It moves through the glacial spires with the patience of something that has been doing this since before the Republic had a name. Carving channels in ice that crystallize into patterns no Jedi has ever quite managed to describe. Master Sindralig has made this journey 4 times. He has never found a word for the sound it makes in the deep crevasse. He has never tried very hard. Some sounds exist to be felt rather than catalogued. Below, in the caves, the Force hums. Not metaphorically. The crystals vibrate at frequencies that bypass the ears entirely, registering in the chest, in the back of the throat, in some pre-language part of the brain that still remembers when the difference between safe and not safe was felt before it was thought. 9 younglings stand at the cave entrance in the gray Ilum morning, and every one of them can feel it. 1 year has passed since the Battle of Naboo. Anakin Skywalker has been a Padawan for 12 months officially. In practice, he has been a problem to be solved, a variable in equations the Council keeps rewriting. The crystals within 3 meters of him vibrate with unusual intensity, which is why he stands at the right edge of the group rather than in the middle, a practical separation. Half precaution and half the quiet diplomacy of masters who have learned to manage things they cannot yet name. He is small for 10. He is intensely alive in a way that has nothing to do with size. His fellow younglings regard him with a mixture of awe and a specific wariness, not fear, exactly, but the feeling you get near an open window in a tall building. The drop isn't threatening you. It's just there. Master Drowlig addresses them with the measured weight of someone who has said these words before, and still means every one. The crystal does not wait for you, he says. It does not reward effort or rank or potential. It responds to truth. Your truth. Whatever that is. You do not take a crystal. You become what it is looking for. He lets that land. The wind takes a breath. The youngling to Anakin's left, small, wide, dark eyes that have been recording everything since they landed, shifts her weight. Anakin glances at her. He asks the question quietly, aimed at the cold air rather than at anyone in particular. What if you don't know what you are yet? No one answers. Drowlig pretends not to have heard. The question settles into the ice and stays there, patient as the crystal hum, waiting for the cave to answer what the masters cannot. The descent into the Ilum caves is beautiful the way things are beautiful when they are entirely indifferent to your presence. 10,000 crystals catch lamplight and pull it apart into spectrums that shouldn't exist. This deep colors the human eye registers, but the brain takes longer to believe. The hum deepens with every level. It stops being a sound. It becomes a pressure you hold in your sternum, and what it says is something that predates language but translates roughly as, you are in the presence of something that has been here longer than you. The pairs split off one by one. The crystal calls each youngling along different paths, a tug, a warmth, a sudden certainty about one direction over another. Anakin goes alone. Drowlig had told him 3 days ago, matter-of-factly, not unkindly, the resonance disruption from his presence made pairing impractical. He had nodded. He was used to instructions that were actually careful ways of saying you are not quite like the others, and we don't know what to do with that yet. He follows the hum down. Then the cave closes. Not physically. The temperature 3 degrees in 1 second. The kind of drop that hits before your body has processed anything changed. The light from his lamp stops refracting and starts reflecting. The 1,000 colors disappear. What remains is his own face in ice gone suddenly, perfectly flat. Mirror flat. The hum shifts registers, lower, slower, deliberate. Not welcoming. Working, Anakin becomes very still. The ice clears from the inside out, like breath leaving glass, and the reflection is no longer his. The figure standing in the mirror is enormous, black-armored, every seam sealed, a mask that breathes with mechanical precision, the exhale pressurized, the inhale filtered, the rhythm of it as regular and as far from human as a machine counting seconds. A red blade in its hand. And arranged at its feet, positioned with the specific absence of urgency that belongs only to the permanent Jedi. Dead ones. Masters and knights and Padawans, placed with inhuman precision, as if someone found the fact of their deaths worth organizing. The figure turns. The face beneath the mask is his, older by decades. The desert sun that made Anakin Skywalker is still there. It aged every feature and evacuated everything that used to live behind them. The eyes are his eyes, and they contain nothing that could be called a person. Not cruelty, not satisfaction. The cruelty would be something. This is the face of a mechanism that once had feelings about what it was doing, and then ran out of them and kept doing it anyway. He's not a monster, Anakin thinks. He's nothing. That's not me, he says aloud. His voice is steadier than it should be. The figure's voice, when it comes, is his own at the bottom of a metal well, distorted by the mask, by the years, by everything between 10 and whatever this is. You'll say that right up until you put on the mask, it tells him. And then you'll say it afterward, to yourself, every night, that you can still feel enough to say anything at all. The mirror goes dark. Anakin does not move. He breathes through it, because breathing is the thing his body knows to do when the rest of him hasn't caught up yet. The ice clears again, slower this time. A battlefield. Gray skies. Clone troopers in white, smoke rising from something burning beyond the frame, and an Anakin in his 30s standing in the center of it, wearing Jedi robes like a uniform, issuing orders with the quiet authority of someone who has done this 10,000 times and will do it 10,000 more. A casualty report arrives. He reviews the numbers with a precise nod. An officer speaks. He responds, redirects, decides. Everything he does is exactly correct. His tactical assessments are probably brilliant. He has become, by every institutional measure, exactly what a Jedi is supposed to be. His eyes are wrong. Not dark. Not gone. Vacant. The difference between a mind and a filing system. Something lived there once and left, and everything afterward was done with perfect competence and perfect absence. Anakin watches him. The first vision was a monster. He understood monsters. They were large and obvious, and the wrongness in them was available from a distance. This was something smaller and much colder. A man who had burned away everything that slowed him down and called what remained strength. The figure looks back through the mirror. You think I'm the failure? No taunt in it. A flat fact, stated for the record. I did everything they asked. I followed every rule. I suppressed everything they told me was a weakness. I achieved everything a Jedi is supposed to achieve. And you know what I never had once, not one day of my life? Barely audible. What? Anything worth fighting for. The third mirror shows him a house. Modest. Late afternoon light through windows. Ordinary furniture, worn at the edges with the comfortable damage of being used and loved. A man who is clearly him, 20 years from now. But full eyes holding the specific warmth of someone who is exactly where they chose to be, seated beside a woman whose face the Force keeps in deliberate shadow, protected, unrevealed, children moving through the light. Laughter that doesn't know it's being noted, doesn't perform itself, simply exists because joy has nowhere better to be. Anakin takes a step toward the mirror. He is 10 years old. He was a slave until 14 months ago. He has never once been held by someone who wasn't on some level afraid of what he might become. His fingertips reach for the glass. The ice beneath him cracks. The vision trembles, not the image but the substance underneath it. The foundations shaking. From somewhere that is not the mirrors and is not the cave, but is the cave and the mirrors and the Force all at once, a voice asks the question the crystal has been holding for 10,000 years. If you could have only one, the power, or the duty, or the love, which would you choose? The fractures spread outward from his feet in every direction, a web racing through glacial walls. Anakin pulls his hand back. He stands in the cracking silence. He is 10 years old and the Force is asking him to choose his life. He holds the question, turns it over, looks at where it came from, at what it assumes, at what it costs. Then, quietly, barely audible, a voice finding itself in the cold. None of them. The cracking stops. I don't accept that those are the only options. All three mirrors release at once, not from violence, From release the sound of something that has held a question for geological time and has finally, unexpectedly, received an answer it did not plan for. The fractures race outward through ice and stone. Cold air rushes through newly opened cavern spaces with a sound like the planet exhaling. The 1,000 refracted lights come flooding in through cracks that weren't there a moment ago, and for one vertiginous second the entire cave is light and motion and the quality of chaos that happens right after something irrevocable. Then silence. In the center of the space, the shattering revealed on a ledge of Ilum ice, exposed, for perhaps the first time in any living memory, a crystal. Small, the color of late afternoon, of the hour between sun and dark. Amber gold. It pulses with warmth that has no business existing in a glacial cave, resonating in a tone that is not quite sound, a chord built of two frequencies that have no right to coexist and have found a way to anyway. Anakin cups his hands beneath it without touching. It falls into his palms. The history of 10,000 years moves through him in a single breath, not in sequence but all at once, the way trauma and joy arrive when they arrive, without calendar. Geological cold. 1 billion sunrises absorbed in darkness, the births of stars and the long silence after. His own history rises to meet it, a sleeping mat in slave quarters, the smell of engine grease and his mother's hands, the terror of a pod racer at full speed. Everything the crystal gives him and everything he gives it, held together in the same moment, neither one overwhelming the other. He exhales, a single, long breath. The ice around him warms. Slowly, the amber light from the crystal fills the cavern from floor to ceiling, wall to wall, until the space looks like the inside of a sunrise that moment just before the sun clears the horizon, when the light is everywhere, and the source is still hidden, and the whole world is the color of becoming. He walks out of the cave 3 hours after he entered. Master Sin Dralig has been standing at the entrance with 2 other masters for 1 hour and 12 minutes. He is, professionally, not alarmed. He is, personally, standing in the precise posture of a man who has been practicing not showing alarm long enough to mostly succeed. The other younglings completed their gatherings before the 2nd hour. The longest gathering in recorded temple history was 47 minutes. Dralig moves forward, opens his mouth to ask whether Anakin is all right. Anakin opens his hand. The golden crystal sits in his palm. It glows in the ice-gray Ilum morning with a warmth that doesn't belong to the weather. The wind, which has not stopped moving since any of them arrived on this planet, stops. The 2 masters behind Dralig exchange a look that contains an entire conversation about the next several years of their lives. Dralig looks at the crystal. He looks at the boy. He closes his mouth. He does not yet have the right words, and he is, after 30 years of training Jedi, wise enough to know that reaching for the wrong ones now would be a significant mistake. So he steps aside. And Anakin Skywalker walks out of the ice. The prophets wrote that the Chosen One would bring balance. They wrote it on temple walls, in sealed holocrons, in the private journals of masters who died without seeing it come. None of them specified what the Chosen One would have to refuse to get there. The workshop smells of mineral oil and concentration. Anakin has been at the bench for 6 hours, and the work has not gone fast, it has gone right, which is a different pace entirely. The components come apart and go together in the sequence he taught himself through pure force of understanding, taking apart broken droids in the Mos Espa desert before he was old enough to know what a lightsaber was. He understands machines. He understands how things should fit together and the specific wrongness of being asked to force a connection that doesn't want to be forced. These components don't want forcing. They want listening. The crystal hums throughout. Not loudly a thread of warmth running beneath the workshop's mechanical sounds, something you'd miss if you weren't paying attention, something you cannot miss if you are. Jedi passing the workshop doorway have been stopping mid-stride since the 3rd hour of construction. Some look in, catch the quality of the air and continue. Some stand at the threshold for a long moment, not entering, not quite leaving, their hands very still, and then walk away without words. Master Yoda passes twice. He says nothing either time. But the 2nd time he slows, and his eyes close for exactly 4 seconds before he continues down the corridor. Nobody sees this except one Padawan at the far end of the hall, who reports it to another Padawan, who reports it to a third, and by nightfall the story has grown a small mythology of its own. The temple breeds rumor the way Ilum breeds crystals slowly, in the dark, until the thing that emerges is harder than what surrounded it. When the lightsaber is finished, Anakin sits with it in both hands without igniting it. He can feel the crystal inside the casing, the way he can feel his own heartbeat, not something he has to reach for, just a presence in the room that happens to be himself. He checks the components one more time, not because he doubts the work, because the work deserves the checking. Then, he ignites it. No held breath. No ceremony. Just the motion of his thumb, and golden light fills the workshop from wall to wall. The amber warmth of it lands on his face, on the bench, on tools and wiring, and the scattered components that didn't make the final assembly. It is the color of the last hour of afternoon. It is the color of something that belongs here. Something the air in this room has been missing, without knowing it was missing anything. Anakin turns the blade slowly in the light it makes of itself. The sound from the workshop doorway is 4 Masters 3 who were passing, one who was not their collective intake of breath happening simultaneously, in a way that sounds, briefly, like one person who has just learned something enormous. One of them steps forward. He looks at the crystal's light the way you look at something you have read about and convinced yourself was metaphor. Impossible, he says. A pause that contains a decision. No, improbable, there is a meaningful difference, and we owe it to the boy to understand which it is. The emergency council session is called before the hour ends. An emergency session means no scheduling, no preparation, no diplomatic cushioning between what a master is thinking and what a master says. 12 seats fill quickly. Anakin waits in the corridor outside, with the patience of a child who learned very young that the rooms where important people decide your future are always rooms you are not in. Inside, the Force is having a conversation with everyone simultaneously. Yoda sits in his chair the way mountains sit, with the stillness of something that has weathered enough changes that one more, even a large one, does not require a new position. His ears are still, his eyes are open. He does not look at the door where Anakin waits. He looks at some middle distance, where the Force has left him something to read. Mace Windu processes this the way he processes a threat assessment, completely, efficiently, with no room for sentiment, but also no room for denial. The Force is being very clear with him. He doesn't like it, which has no bearing on the fact of it. The set of his jaw says he is doing math, and the math is resolving into a conclusion he would have argued against yesterday. Shakti walks into the council chamber from the far entrance and stops moving the moment she crosses the threshold. The crystal's resonance reaches her without warning. She is more sensitive to harmonic force frequencies than any master currently serving. And what she feels when the golden blade's signature arrives is something she could not have named before this moment. She sits, she weeps, quietly, without performance or apology. Nobody asks her to explain. Nobody asks her to stop. Some things in the Force communicate more clearly through tears than through anything that fits in a sentence. Then, they debate. Because this is the Council, and the Council's response to the unprecedented is to reason at it until it agrees to be comprehensible. Mace's voice is measured in the way it is always measured, saying exactly what it means with no gesture toward what it wishes were true. The prophecy says he will bring balance. It says nothing about what he'll have to become to do it, or whether the Order's definition of balance is the correct one. He lets that land. I would like us to be very careful about assuming those are the same thing. Ki-Adi-Mundi leans forward. He is not a malicious man and not a stupid one, and the thing he is about to say is worth saying even if the room doesn't welcome it. Are we certain this is not a seduction? A golden crystal appearing to the most powerful Force-sensitive in generations, it sounds precisely like the kind of symbol a dark-side intelligence would engineer. The room has the quality of a space where arguments are gathering momentum. Yoda speaks. Not loud. It is the kind of quiet that closes discussions. Doubt him, you may. A pause that has genuine weight in it. The Force is not bound by our doubts. The room settles. Not resolved settled, which is different. The Force has made its position known through a crystal in a child's hand, and the Council is slowly understanding that debating the Force's position is a separate matter from determining their response to it. They were wrong to hesitate. Acknowledging that is not the same as knowing what to do next, but it is the necessary condition for knowing anything after. The decision emerges in stages, the way institutional decisions always do: pieces agreed upon, pieces deferred, the whole never as clean as the moment that required it. 3 masters assigned to Anakin's personal training alongside Obi-Wan. No suppression of the crystal's nature, no forced adherence to the standard curriculum sequence. They will follow what the Force has done rather than overlay their expectations on it. It is, for the Jedi Council, an act of considerable humility. It costs several masters something real. Yoda takes Anakin to a rooftop garden on Coruscant's 63rd level, where rescued birds are kept a small corner of preserved biology in a city that has otherwise decided it doesn't need any. He gives Anakin no exercises, no instruction, no grades. He sits beside him in the late afternoon light among creatures that have no awareness of the Force, and are therefore. In some way Anakin cannot yet articulate, demonstrating it more naturally than any training room ever has. Feel it, Yoda says. Don't name it. Don't categorize it. Let the Force be what it is before you decide what it means. Anakin sits with that for a long time. He does not feel like he is learning something. He feels like something he has always known is being given permission to stop hiding. Mace Windu does not take him anywhere. He meets him in a training room, stands at its center, and tells him something the Order has spent 1,000 years approaching sideways and never quite saying directly to a child who needed to hear it. You will face darkness in yourself and in every enemy you ever meet. Pretending it does not exist will kill you. A pause that isn't dramatic, just accurate. Learning to use it without becoming it. That is the difference between a warrior and a weapon. Anakin looks at him. He thinks about the caves on Ilum and what the second mirror showed him and what he understood in the moment before the ice cracked. He says nothing. He files Mace Windu into a category he hadn't expected to create. People who tell the truth when they don't have to. Shakti speaks to him in a meditation room in the temple's quieter wing, and what she says finds him the way true things find you, not by arriving, but by locating something already present. You are not a bomb waiting to go off, Anakin. Her voice is precise and unhurried. You are a storm learning to know itself. That is an entirely different problem. And it has an entirely different solution. He thinks about that for several days afterward. He thinks about it in the way he thinks about things that don't resolve carrying them from room to room until they find the shelf they belong on. Chancellor Palpatine requests a private visit. The Council permits it, watching through the Force from a careful distance, which Palpatine knows and has accounted for in the 12 ways he accounts for everything. He is warm. He is grandfatherly. He has known Anakin since Naboo, and the history between them is real in the way history is always real, even when what someone does with it is not. He sits across from Anakin in a receiving room that smells of Coruscanti wood polish and old power, and he calibrates the warmth of his interest with the precision of a very fine instrument. You're extraordinary, my boy. He says it the way someone says something they have wanted to say for a long time, which is true in every sense except the one it implies. The Council will never truly understand what you are. They're afraid of it, I think, but I see it clearly. You deserve more than what they're giving you. Anakin looks at the Chancellor with the direct attention of a child who has been spending his afternoons learning from Shakti to feel the difference between the weather and the room it enters. Something in this room is wrong. Not in a way he can name. He is 12, and he has no language for Sith manipulation, no framework for identifying a technique refined across generations. But Shakti's work means he can register wrongness, the way you register a room that was recently cold even after the cold has left it. The Chancellor's warmth has a temperature beneath it. The interest in him arrives alongside a suggestion that always moves in the same direction that the Jedi are his limitation, that what he is exceeds what they can hold. He hears both things at once. Master Yoda says, "The Force doesn't need anyone to understand it," Anakin says, without coolness, without accusation. It just needs to be listened to. A pause. I should get back. I have the afternoon session with Master Tai. He leaves with the ease of a child excusing himself from a table where he has eaten enough. No performance of suspicion, no display, just a boy who has somewhere to be. The door closes. Palpatine sits in the empty room for a moment that is longer than his moments usually are. In 30 years of moving the galaxy like pieces on a board, he has planned for resistance, for rage, for grief weaponized at exactly the right moment, for every form of hunger he has ever learned to recognize. He has not planned for contentment. The boy is content. There is no hollow in him to fill with the particular comfort Palpatine offers. The warmth he radiates meets the crystal's warmth and finds no gap to enter through. For the first time in a very long while, Darth Sidious looks at the board and finds a piece that does not know it is in the game, and that the piece's ignorance is entirely beside the point. He sits with that until he knows what to do with it. It takes longer than it usually does. Late afternoon in the temple's east wing, the training garden below catches the last slant of Coruscant's light. What filters through the cityscape is never quite full sun, always modified by a billion windows and a million structures, but it pools here in the garden with something like intention. Obi-Wan stands at the window and watches Anakin move through Sarisu drills in the long light below. The golden blade traces slow, deliberate arcs that have nothing of the explosive, instinctive combat Anakin arrived with 18 months ago. Patient now. Choosing patience, which is the meaningful thing, not patience that has never been tested, but patience that has met what impatience costs, and weighed the two against each other, and made a decision. Obi-Wan thinks about Qui-Gon. He does this often enough that the practice has its own shape, a worn path in his internal landscape, the particular quality of absence that someone leaves behind when they were large enough to leave an actual shape. He wonders what Qui-Gon would say, watching this. He wonders about the distance between what Qui-Gon saw in this child on Tatooine and what the Council still sees, even now. Even with the golden blade making its argument in every room it enters. He thinks about what it means to be the person the Force chose to train someone it had already decided about before anyone else had a vote. Below in the garden, the blade catches the late light and holds it. Amber, patient, warm, moving with a steadiness that Anakin did not arrive with and has built, day by day, in a temple that is still not entirely certain what to do with him. Obi-Wan watches him move through the light. He does not know that in approximately 3 hours, Qui-Gon Jinn will speak to him from across whatever boundary exists between the living and the dead and tell him exactly what he needs to do about all of it. For now, the garden. For now, the blade in the last of the afternoon. For now, the quiet that exists just before everything changes. It is, briefly, enough. The night Coruscant makes is not dark. It is amber. 10 million structures throw their light upward and sideways and into every available angle of sky, and what settles across the temple's upper quarters is not darkness, but something more complicated, a glow that belongs to no particular source. The residue of 10 million lives proceeding without awareness that they are generating it. Obi-Wan meditates in this light with his windows open, and the sound of the city coming through at a distance, reduced by altitude to a frequency more felt than heard. He is 26 years old. He has been a Jedi Knight for 23 months. He is not unhappy he has a purpose, a Padawan, a structure for his days that gives them shape, and the satisfaction of a life pointed in a direction. He is not settled, either. The Force tonight feels the way the air feels before a storm that hasn't decided yet whether to arrive. He does not hear Qui-Gon arrive. He simply notices, at some moment he cannot locate precisely, that the room is no longer empty. The quality of the air has changed, slightly warmer, a low harmonic undertone beneath the city's ambient sound, the specific weight of a presence arriving from the other side of a threshold the living do not normally cross. It fills the chair across from him, without filling it no visible source, nothing that would register as sight. Only the unmistakable felt sense of someone being in a room who should not be able to be in any room. Then Qui-Gon's voice, unmistakable even after 23 months of absence, speaking into the room from no direction Obi-Wan could precisely identify. "You've grown into yourself. I wasn't entirely sure you would." Obi-Wan's breath leaves him in a sharp, controlled way that takes everything 10 years of training has built to keep contained. He opens his eyes. The chair across from him holds nothing visible and something enormous. It is the most Qui-Gon thing possible, present without announcement, felt before understood, refusing to be what you expected even now. Master, one word. Everything he has carried for 23 months compressed inside it, grief and love, and the specific shock of something impossible, refusing to be impossible. How long have you been able to appear? Long enough to watch. A pause. Long enough to know I can't watch silently anymore. Qui-Gon does not lecture. He never did. It was not his method. He asks questions, which is more effective and considerably more unsettling, because you cannot argue with a question the same way you can argue with a conclusion. He asks Obi-Wan to state the prophecy. Obi-Wan does, the way you recite something repeated so often the words have become objects rather than meaning. He will bring balance to the Force. Qui-Gon asks whether the prophecy specifies that Anakin must accomplish this as a Jedi. A pause. No, it doesn't. Qui-Gon asks whether the Order has ever seriously interrogated its own definition of balance, whether what the Jedi call the light side is genuinely what the Force considers balanced, or whether it is what 1,000 years of institutional thinking has decided to call balanced, and whether those are the same thing. The city hums below. Obi-Wan is quiet. The Jedi Order is ancient, wise, and has accomplished extraordinary things. The voice from no fixed point carries the warmth it always carried, not softened, not ghostly, just Qui-Gon. It has also spent 1,000 years treating the dark side as an enemy to be defeated, rather than a frequency to be understood. Do you think the Force, the same Force that created both light and shadow, both growth and decay, both love and grief, considers that balanced? The Sith. Obi-Wan begins. The Sith are not the dark side. Quietly, without impatience. They are what happens when someone mistakes domination for mastery. The dark side is part of the Force. The Jedi have spent 1,000 years afraid of half of existence. He lets that sit. That is not balance, Obi-Wan. That is amputation. And you cannot fulfill the prophecy of balance while performing amputation. Long silence. Obi-Wan does not argue, because he cannot. He has the intelligence to know when he cannot, and the integrity not to try anyway. There are limits, Obi-Wan tells him, to what can cross the boundary between what is living and what is not. The mechanics are imprecise. What arrives is not complete information, but something closer to conviction, the Force's translation of knowledge into urgency. He cannot give Obi-Wan proof, he can give him certainty. A Sith Lord is operating within the Republic's power structure. He has been there for decades. He is fixated on Anakin in a way that predates Naboo. The child's existence was known. Monitored. Factored into plans that reach further than anything Obi-Wan's imagination has been given cause to reach. The golden crystal changes the direct approach. The Sith cannot turn Anakin through straightforward dark side seduction. The crystal's equilibrium resists it. But the Jedi Order's own rules are more useful to the enemy than anything engineered from outside. Anakin will love, Qui-Gon says. Deeply, totally, without the capacity for the emotional half measures the Order demands. And when the Order tells him, as it inevitably will, that love is a weakness, or a violation, or a chain that must be severed, he will believe them, because he respects them. And that belief will hollow him. And whoever is waiting in the shadows will fill the hollow with exactly what a hollowed man most desperately wants. We're training him differently now, Obi-Wan says. You're training him differently inside the same institutional walls. The voice is not unkind. It never was, even when it carried what hurt most. The walls are the problem. The walls say, suppress what makes you human and call it strength. The man in the shadows will offer to give it all back. And a man told long enough that his love is a liability will take that offer regardless of what it costs. Obi-Wan pushes back. He does this honestly, not performatively, because Qui-Gon deserves honest resistance rather than the pretense of agreement. He loves the Order. Not as an institution, as the architecture of his life. It gave him purpose, identity, a structure of meaning wide enough to live inside. It gave him Qui-Gon himself, which is the most specific and irreplaceable thing it gave him. Leaving it is not a logical step. It is an amputation, and he will not pretend otherwise, not even for the voice of a dead man whose judgment he trusts more than his own. They could stay, he argues. They could be the reform from within. They could take what the last year has built Yoda's presence work, Mace's honesty, Shakti's precision, and push it deeper, make the institution bend before it breaks. Change is possible from inside. Qui-Gon listens to every argument completely. This was always his method. He never dismissed anything before he had understood it. You always knew, when Qui-Gon Jinn disagreed with you, that he had heard you first, and the disagreement was genuine rather than impatient. When Obi-Wan finishes, Qui-Gon says one thing. When I was dying on Naboo, I asked you to train the boy. Simply, without the gravity another person might reach for. I didn't ask the order. I asked you. Because even then, I knew you were the one who would have to carry this. I'm asking you again. Train him your way, not theirs. Whatever that costs. Silence. The Coruscant light holds amber in the window. The 10 million lives below have no idea what is happening in this room. They never do. The enormous decisions of history happen in rooms exactly this small. In conversations that leave no record except the shape of what comes after. If I do this, Obi-Wan says quietly, if we leave, they'll see it as betrayal. Yes, they'll be wrong. Yes, but they'll see it as betrayal anyway. I'll have to live with that. So will they. A pause that holds something heavier than everything before it. But Anakin won't have to live with Vader. The name means nothing to Obi-Wan. It is a word from nowhere, a designation for something that hasn't happened yet, spoken by the dead in the language of an unfixed future. But the Force carries weight inside it that lands in Obi-Wan's chest like a stone dropping into still water, and something in him understands, with the cold clarity of instinct, arriving faster than reason, that this is the name of what Anakin becomes if the wrong thing happens, that the wrong thing is specifically preventable, that he is the prevention, and has always been the prevention, and Qui-Gon knew it on the floor of the Theed generator room, and spent his last breath saying so. He doesn't ask for the explanation, he does not want it. He wants it to be preventable. That is enough. The warmth in the room fades, not dramatically, the way a candle goes present, and then less so. And then the harmonic undertone resolves into ordinary city noise, and Obi-Wan is alone in the room with the memory of what just happened, and the full weight of what he has agreed to carry. He sits in the dark for a long time. Then he stands. He moves to his quarters. He begins to pack. The next morning, full council, every seat filled, every face present. Obi-Wan stands at the chamber center and states his intention without apology and without theater. He is leaving the Order, and he is taking Anakin with him. He delivers Qui-Gon's warnings, the Sith embedded within the Republic's highest levels, the attachment doctrine as the enemy's instrument, the fracture the Order is engineering into its most powerful living asset, one suppressed feeling at a time. He says all of it clearly. Then, he waits. The Council is not uniform. It is never uniform when something truly important arrives, because its members are not the same person wearing 12 different faces. They came to this institution by different roads, and they have not forgotten those roads simply because they arrived at the same destination. Yoda is silent for a long moment. The silence has quality to it, not absence, but active listening, as if the Force is speaking in the space words haven't reached yet. When he speaks, his voice carries the particular care of something final. Know this, I do, right or wrong in the Force's eyes, this path is yours to walk. Walk it with your whole self. Mace Windu does not accept this. He is not wrong to refuse. His position has integrity, and the Council's role in the prophecy is not a small thing. You are making a catastrophic mistake. This boy is the chosen one. We cannot shepherd the prophecy if we are not present for it. Obi-Wan meets his eyes. He does not look away and he does not soften it. Perhaps, but I'd rather make my own catastrophic mistakes than repeat yours. The chamber is very quiet after that. Not hostile quieted. The specific quiet of a room full of people who understand that something irrevocable has just been said. And that being said, it is also true. Anakin is in the corridor outside. He has been here long enough. The walls of this temple are old stone and old silence, and old stone carries sound in ways adults forget when they have grown accustomed to thinking of architecture as private. He has heard enough to understand what happened inside and what comes next. He looks at Obi-Wan when Obi-Wan walks through the door, looks at him the way a 12-year-old looks at something when he has already made his own decision and is simply checking it against someone else's face. "Where are we going?" Obi-Wan looks at him. The corridor is quiet. In this moment, there is a name he heard last night that he will carry for the rest of his life, and an entirely unknown future ahead, and a dead man's voice in an empty room, and the weight of what he has agreed to carry. First, Tatooine, he says it steadily, the way you say the next step when the next step is all you need. Then somewhere I haven't been in a very long time. Anakin nods. Once, decisive, the way a child nods when they have already accepted what they are walking into and are simply confirming the direction. They walk. The ship begins its descent, and Anakin doesn't need to be told where they are. He knows from the light first, that specific bleached quality, the twin sun white that strips color from everything it touches. Then, the landscape through the viewport, sand in every direction, terracotta and pale ochre, interrupted by the geometric protrusions of moisture evaporators and the occasional dark line of a settlement road going nowhere in particular. He hasn't spoken for 4 minutes. Obi-Wan doesn't ask him to. Some recognitions deserve their own silence. Anakin came from this planet as a slave. He is returning as a free person for the first time in his life. He holds his breath the way you hold your breath when something you've been carrying for a long time is about to either become real or prove you were wrong to carry it. The Lars Moisture Farm sits on the edge of the Junlen Wastes, modest, functional, the kind of property that doesn't ask to be looked at. Cliegg Lars meets them at the perimeter, a broad man with a farmer's hands and the direct eyes of someone who made a decision and has never lost sleep about it. He bought Shmi Skywalker from Watto 2 years ago, freed her the same afternoon, married her 6 months later. He says all of this plainly, as a fact rather than a story requiring admiration. Shmi is in the main room. The reunion is not triumphant. It is not the thing stories make of it, no swelling emotion, no speeches. It is a mother and her son in a room together after 3 years, and neither of them has words, because the words would be too small for what they're trying to hold. Shmi pulls him close first. Anakin lets her. He is 12 years old and he was a Padawan of the Jedi Order. And he has been trained by 3 masters and a dead man's voice, and he stands in this room and is simply her son. She pulls back, touches his face. Her hands are the same as he remembers, rough-palmed, certain. "You're taller," she says. "You hold yourself differently." "I'm trying to. You look like you're carrying something. I think I'm supposed to." She looks at him for a long moment, the particular look of a woman who spent years talking to a 9-year-old in her head, measuring the distance between that boy and whoever was becoming him out in the galaxy. Then, she takes a breath. "Don't let it bend you, my love. Even the weight of a whole galaxy has no right to bend you." They stay 2 days. On the last morning, Anakin goes up to the roof before the sun's rise and watches the sky change from black to gray to the first impossible bronze of Tatooine dawn. He sat on a different roof, in a different part of this desert, at age 9, and wanted to be somewhere anywhere else. He is somewhere else now. He has been somewhere else. He will go somewhere else again. He ignites the golden blade once, alone, in the binary dawn light. Not for practice, not for anyone. A calibration who he was against the sky that made him, measured against the blade the Force decided he should carry. The amber light and the desert light are briefly the same color. He extinguishes it, goes inside to say goodbye. In the courtyard, Obi-Wan and Shmi speak briefly while Anakin loads the ship. She thanks him for taking care of her son. He deflects. Anakin largely takes care of himself, has since the first month. She looks at him steadily. That's what worries me about him. He shouldn't have to. Obi-Wan has no good answer. He knows she's right. Sundari rises from Mandalore's surface like an argument made of metal and intention. From above, the planet's surface is barren in a way that carries history rather than simply absence. This was once lush, productive, and it was burned bare across centuries of wars that the Mandalorians fought with the thoroughness that was always their particular gift. The dome is Duchess Satine Kryze's answer to what her people did to their own world. Life preserved inside walls from a landscape that could not heal itself. It is enormous and beautiful, and if you look at it clearly, a monument to what happens when a culture decides to make war its primary export. The receiving hall is formal stone floors, banners, the measured architecture of a head of state who understands that rooms shape conversations before words begin. Satine enters with the composure she has built over a decade of governance, not the absence of feeling, but the learned architecture around it. She sees Obi-Wan. Her composure holds. It holds the way well-built things hold visibly, with effort, the joints showing. "You chose to leave," she says. Yes, voluntarily, with significant external persuasion of the metaphysical variety. A beat. Then she turns to the child beside him, and the head of state fully reasserts herself formally, with the deliberate respect owed to a ward of the new Mandalorian state. "You are welcome in Mandalore, Anakin Skywalker. If you wish it, this dome is your home." Anakin looks around the receiving hall, the scale of it, the banners, the people moving through its edges with the purposeful efficiency of a functioning government. He has lived in slave quarters and Jedi corridors and a ship for 3 weeks, and none of those were this. He looks back at her. "I've never had one of those before." Satine is quiet for a moment. Then, very quietly, aimed at Obi-Wan's ear while Anakin turns to examine a wall carving with the focused curiosity he brings to everything new. "We'll have to do something about that." 10 years pass the way rivers pass, not all at once, but continuously, carrying things forward. Year 1. Anakin is catastrophically bad at Mandoa. Not for lack of effort, for excess of it, which produces errors of spectacular creativity. He mispronounces Vod as something that, in one of the southern dialects, translates roughly to a category of livestock disease. The Mandalorian guard assigned to his corridor corrects him with the barely suppressed horror of a man watching someone do irreversible damage to something he loves. Anakin is delighted, not embarrassed delighted, with the specific joy of someone who understands that failure is information arriving faster than success. He keeps going until he gets it right. He keeps going after he gets it right, because he wants to be fluent, not merely functional. By year's end he speaks Mandoa with an accent the traditionalists call unique, and the guards privately find endearing, though they would rather face the Sith than admit it. Year 2. Satine officially commissions what she describes in the relevant documentation as protective training equipment for her ward, maintaining with complete diplomatic composure the fiction that it is not warrior armor. Sergeant Vela Ordo, 50 years old, House Ordo, a veteran of the wars Satine's government has legislated away but not erased, watches Anakin strap it on for the first time. "The armor doesn't make the Mandalorian," she says. But the Mandalorian doesn't argue with the armor. Anakin moves naturally in it within a week. Vela tells no one how much this impresses her. She has worn Beskar since she was 8 years old, and watching someone adapt to it in a week with the same casual competence they bring to everything else is either inspiring or deeply irritating, and she hasn't fully decided which. Year 4. Anakin is 16. He and Obi-Wan accompany a new Mandalorian diplomatic mission to a border conflict where 6 aid workers are pinned down by separatist-aligned contractors who have decided the definition of contractor includes the intimidation of unarmed medical personnel. 3 of them come at Anakin. He disables all 3 in 8 seconds force redirection on the first blaster bolt, Beskar joint lock on the second man before he finishes drawing, a precise pressure strike on the third that drops him without bruising. No killing, no ignited blade. 8 seconds. Obi-Wan watches from 7 meters away. He sees for the first time, not a student, but whatever the student has grown into something that doesn't fit cleanly in any category his training gave him. Not Jedi. Not Mandalorian. Something built from both, and reducible to neither. He doesn't have a word for it yet. The Force doesn't seem to think he needs one. Year 7. Dinner in Satine's private quarters, the 3 of them. Informal. The kind of meal that accumulates meaning slowly. Anakin is somewhere in the middle of a story about a training exercise involving a jetpack and a significant quantity of Sundari's ornamental shrubbery when he notices. He notices the way they look at each other when they think the other isn't looking. He notices the specific quality of their silences, which are the silences of people who have been having a long conversation that has technically never happened. He is 19 years old and has spent 7 years watching these two people be careful around something neither of them will name. He finishes the story, excuses himself with elaborate casualness, a sudden memory of something he absolutely must attend to, entirely plausible, no further details available. Closes the door behind him. Through it, after a moment, Satine's low laugh. The particular laugh of someone who has finally been given permission to stop performing composure. Anakin leans against the corridor wall in the dark and grins at nobody, because some things feel right even when you're not inside them. Year 9. Then 10. Vela Ordo is 60. She tests Anakin in the Concordia training yard, full contact Beskod against the golden saber, no adjustment for the age gap, no professional courtesy. She puts him down twice. The first time with a feint he reads a half-second too slowly. The second time with a joint trap built over 3 years of deliberate engineering, exploiting the specific overconfidence that force sensitivity develops in close quarters work. Third exchange. Anakin stops fighting from expectation and starts fighting from attention, absorbing her pattern through the Force, rather than projecting ahead of it, reacting to what she is doing, rather than what he has calculated she will do. She cannot find the angle. She cannot put him down a third time. When it ends, both of them breathing hard, "You're better than I was at your age." Anakin, honest without performance, "You're still better than me right now." Yes, she looks at him steadily. "But I won't be next year." And that's how it should be. Anakin is nearly 22, standing on Mandalore's surface outside the dome in the late evening, where the desert wind comes down from the rock formations and the double moons sit low on the horizon like a slow conversation no one is rushing. He ignites the golden blade not for training, not for practice, simply because the moment asks for it. Because the amber and the moon silver and the wind make a particular feeling that the blade belongs inside. He is known here. He is loved here by Satine, by Obi-Wan, by Vela, and the guards who once corrected his Mandoa, and the traditional clan representatives who have started arriving in ones and twos to see the man with the gold and black blades, though tonight he carries only one. He has purpose that belongs to him rather than to an institution that handed it down. He is, in this moment, at a peace that was built, rather than given earned through a decade of choosing it, daily, against everything that wanted to pull him into something simpler and more consuming. His comm unit chimes. Death Watch movements near the eastern border. Organized, coordinated in a way that doesn't match Pre Vizsla's usual operational signature, too precise, too simultaneous, too aware of the new Mandalorian defensive rotation. The funding traces don't resolve to Vizsla's accounts. They resolve to layered shells that point off-world, to someone with Republic-level resources and a specific, deliberate interest in what the Twilight Guard is doing in this dome. Someone wants to know what happens when Anakin faces everything at once. The piece ends. It does not crack, it simply completes, the way a held breath completes when the body finally decides it has held it long enough. He extinguishes the blade, turns back toward the dome, goes inside to brief Obi-Wan. The darksaber doesn't fight him. That's not quite it. What it does is more precise. It notices when he isn't certain of himself, and lets him feel the difference between confidence that is rooted and confidence that is performed. In combat, this registers as a millisecond of drag at the moments, when his surety is manufactured rather than earned. Not enough to compromise his combat effectiveness. Enough to be honest about. He trains with both blades in private for 3 weeks and maps the pattern carefully. The golden saber is his, has been his in every cellular and spiritual sense since the ice cave on Ilum. The darksaber is his now by right of combat, acknowledged by every warrior whose acknowledgement matters. But it is not fully his in the way the golden blade is. It is a thing he wields rather than a thing that wields with him. He knows what this means. The dark side component of the darksaber requires him to understand dark side energy on its own terms, not as one frequency in an equilibrium he manages from a careful distance, but as a thing he has actually gone to meet. He needs to go deeper into the vault. He brings this to Obi-Wan and Satine together. Not to Obi-Wan first, both of them, in the same room, because he will not manage either of them separately to get the answer he wants. There are artifacts in the old vaults, he says. Dark side relics from the Mandalorian Wars. I need to study them. Obi-Wan goes still in the way he goes still when he is doing honest internal work rather than reaching for the reflexive answer. Define study. Meditate near them. Read what they contain. Learn how the dark side was understood before the Sith made it exclusively about domination. A long pause. And if you feel it beginning to pull, then I stop. And I tell you. And we understand why. Satine has been listening with the precise, unhurried attention she brings to Senate negotiations, hearing what is said and what is left unsaid simultaneously, giving equal weight to both. I'll permit it. One condition. You report to me after every session, not just to Obi-Wan. Why to you? She looks at him steadily. Because Obi-Wan will rationalize anything you do if he loves you enough. I won't. Obi-Wan opens his mouth. Closes it. He does not disagree. Session 1. The Outer Antechamber. The dormant Sith holocrons at range. Anakin sits cross-legged with the artifacts 12 feet away, close enough to feel the pressure, far enough that the feeling doesn't become overwhelming. The dark side pressure registers as heightened clarity. That is the only honest word for it. Not horror, not seduction information. The quality of perception sharpens in a way that has nothing to do with comfort. The dark side sees what is, stripped of the optimism that light side sensitivity sometimes imposes between a person and reality. It sees weight without hope. It sees consequence without mitigation. It sees what is true because the truth is useful when survival is the primary concern and there is nothing else to soften it. He observes this without judgment, the way a navigator notes a current. Here is what this does. Here is what it costs. Here is what you do with that knowledge. He notes how the dark side responds to pain, not aversion but attention, reading it as data. He notes how it responds to limitation, not acceptance, but refusal, treating limitation as a problem to be solved with force if necessary. He comes out and tells Satine everything he observed. She listens. She asks 3 questions. What did it want from you? What did you want from it? And what was the difference between those 2 things? He answers all 3. She writes the answers down and says nothing further. Her silence is not a judgment. It is a record. Session 2. The Tome of Malachor Shadows. Weeks of it. Old Sith is not a language, it is a philosophy recorded in notation that assumes the reader is willing to be changed by what they find. Obi-Wan contributes fragments of Academy research, enough to build a working grammar. The rest Anakin assembles through the Force, meaning arriving adjacent to the notation. The ancient writer's intentions transmitting themselves in compressed impressions, harder to falsify than any translation. What he finds is not what he expected. The pre-Bane texts don't describe the dark side as power. They describe it as a lens, a way of perceiving without the protective filtering that hope imposes, the optimistic processing that edits experience toward meaning before meaning has been earned. The dark side removes the edit. It reads what is present, exactly as present, unmediated, and the light side reads what is possible, beyond what is present. And between them, that's what balance means. Not a compromise between 2 frequencies, a muddled midpoint that fully inhabits neither. A dual-frequency receiver, carrying both simultaneously the full weight of what is and the full reach toward what could be. Reality as it exists and reality as it could become, held together in the same perception without either one suppressing the other. He reads this and sits with it for a long time. Then he goes back to the vault. Session 3. The Cartographer Stone. Beskar cased, sealed by Mandalorian hands that had no idea what they were containing. When Anakin opens the casing, the cold arrives immediately, not thermal cold, but force cold, the sensation of concentrated dark side proximity without warmth or welcome. He holds the stone and extends his awareness outward through it, and the stone maps for him. Dark side nexus points surface across the galaxy, like lights becoming visible as the eyes adjust to dark. Malachor ancient, enormous, the sustained resonance of a catastrophic event so large, the Force is still registering it millennia later. Moribund, older, quieter, layered with the specific silence of something that was once very loud and has since stopped needing to announce itself. And something in the unknown regions, cold and patient in a way that has no human scale attached to it, no historical context, patient the way geological time is patient. And then, Coruscant. Beneath the light of 10 million structures, beneath the residue of 1 billion daily lives producing their amber ambient glow, something ancient and enormous and so well concealed that the Jedi Temple was built directly above it without anyone understanding what they were building on. A dark side presence that has been there longer than the current Republic, sitting beneath every council session, every meditation, every carefully reasoned conclusion the Order has ever reached. He tells Obi-Wan. He sits him down and tells him what the stone showed, in the order it showed it, and ends with Coruscant. Obi-Wan goes very still. Not the processing stillness a different quality, the stillness of something that just became much heavier and is being held carefully. "How long?" he says. The stone gave Anakin an impression rather than a number. He translates it as accurately as he can. Longer than the Order. Obi-Wan says nothing for a long time after that. The room says nothing with him. The final vault session. Anakin takes the darksaber inside and sits among all of it simultaneously, the holocrons, the tome, the stone, the echo blades in their cases on the far wall, and releases his light side into reserve. Not suppresses it. Releases it, the way you release a held breath, deliberately, with full intention of taking it back. He opens the dark side channel without the golden saber's equilibrium managing it from outside. He lets the full resonance arrive, not the Sith's version. Weaponized through domination and appetite, but the original frequency underneath it. What the dark side is before someone decided that understanding it was identical to being consumed by it. What it offers is terrifying in its clarity, the release of the need for others to be safe, which sounds like cruelty until you understand that it is simply accuracy. The universe being what it is without the softening that love imposes. The full weight of pure will imposed on reality without social negotiation, monstrous, and also the most honest description of power anyone has ever recorded. The seduction of unlimited projection, of a force connection that answers only to its user and to nothing else. He holds all of it for 2 hours. He lets it be what it is. He comes back. Obi-Wan is waiting outside the vault door. He looks at Anakin with the expression he keeps for things he is genuinely uncertain about and has decided not to pretend otherwise. Well, it's not evil. It's not good. It's a frequency. And Anakin picks up the darksaber. The blade ignites, and for the first time, no drag, no resistance. No millisecond of the blade noting something unsettled in the man holding it. It simply answers. The circuit between the two crystals closes, gold and black finding the current between them, and it is complete. I understand it now. Not the Sith version. Their version is like using a surgical knife to clear a forest. This is the original thing. The dark before it was weaponized, before someone decided that understanding something meant becoming it. Obi-Wan's eyes go to the darksaber, the white electric crackle at its edges. Steady now, calm rather than feral, as if it has finally stopped testing the man who holds it. Are you changed? Anakin holds both blades, gold in the right hand, black in the left. The light between them is a color that has no name. Yes, but toward myself, not away. In the Mandalorian courtyard the next morning, he trains with both blades in full cooperation for the first time, not managing the circuit but being it, the golden saber and the dark saber, moving as a complete language with no gap between sentences, no moment where one waits for the other to finish. The traditional clan representatives who have gathered in Sundari stand at the courtyard's edge and watch in absolute silence, the kind of silence that is not the absence of sound, but the presence of undivided attention. Someone whispers it in Mandoa. Solus Cod. The name carries something now that was not there before. Not reverence for what he has done for the duel, the claiming, the years of formation. Reverence for what he is. That is a different and considerably heavier thing entirely, and every warrior in the courtyard feels the difference, and no one says another word. The force trembles before the news does. Anakin and Obi-Wan are in Satine's council chamber when Geonosis happens, not watching a HoloNet broadcast, but feeling it. A shockwave through the force of millions of beings, mobilizing for violence simultaneously. The galaxy's entire accumulated tension releasing into kinetic action all at once. The force registers mass events the way a string registers a sudden grip. The vibration travels before the cause is understood. Neither of them speaks. The force is speaking loudly enough. Satine sets down her briefing notes. She looks at both of them. She has governed a pacifist world on the edge of a galaxy that has been building toward this for years, and she knows exactly what this moment means. Mandalore remains neutral. That is not negotiable, and it is not going to change. They do not argue. Neutral is exactly what they need. What they decide, in the hour that follows, is this: they will not fight for the Republic. They left it. They will not fight for the separatist Sith adjacent, built on manufactured grievance, fighting for reasons that have nothing to do with the systems they claim to represent. They will fight for the people trapped between those two forces, who did not choose this war and are not capable of leaving it. The civilian populations, the ones neither side is counting. 42 warriors. Satine's blessing and traditional clan endorsement, the warrior factions have found, since Pre Vizsla's death, that they can cooperate with the new Mandalorian government on operations that carry no political allegiance and do not require them to disavow who they are. They call themselves nothing. The Outer Rim names them, within weeks, the Twilight Guard. For the dual blades at their center gold and black, like the hour between day and dark. Christophsis, a Republic prison vessel, holds separatist civilians, aid workers, medical personnel, family members caught in the opening arrests of the war's first week. Non-combatants by any legal definition, detained because the Republic needs to demonstrate seriousness, and these were the people available. The Republic will not release them political liability. The Separatists will not negotiate for them. Their own leadership has decided these particular civilians are not worth the diplomatic cost. The Twilight Guard extracts them in 17 minutes. The complication arrives in the form of a Republic admiral who has positioned a cruiser to intercept the extraction vessel and has every wartime legal authority to open fire. Anakin boards the admiral's ship alone, unarmed, and speaks with him for 8 minutes in a briefing room while the extraction ship holds position outside. He tells the admiral with calm precision exactly what the Force has shown him about the admiral's institutional future if he opens fire on a humanitarian extraction of civilians who were never combatants. He describes it in enough specific detail that the admiral understands this is not a negotiating position. The admiral stands down. Obi-Wan asks afterward what exactly he said. Anakin tells him. Obi-Wan is quiet for a moment. You're going to need to be very careful with that. I know. Rhodia, 11 humanitarian aid workers trapped behind separatist lines when the front moved faster than anyone anticipated. Their organization is Republic-affiliated, which means the Republic cannot send military extraction without triggering a formal engagement. The Separatist commander is willing to meet with neutrals. He is not willing to negotiate with Jedi or Republic military, but he has been watching the Twilight Guard on the HoloNet with the professional interest of a military man evaluating a unit he may eventually need to engage. Obi-Wan negotiates. He sits across the table from the Separatist commander and deploys something that is not quite Jedi diplomatic training and not quite Satine's political education, but is built from both precise, patient, entirely without sentiment or institutional backing, carrying nothing but the argument itself and his willingness to make it clearly. The commander responds to clarity. He is a military man, and he respects people who say what they mean. Anakin stands behind Obi-Wan and says nothing. He doesn't need to. Both blades are at his belt. The commander's eyes go to them throughout the negotiation, and those glances carry more than any words Anakin could add. The aid workers are released in 6 hours. The Twilight Guard is out of Separatist space before the commander's superiors know a meeting happened. Ryloth, the worst. A Separatist blockade has been starving the Twi'lek civilian population for weeks when the Republic finally commits military force to break it. The battle is catastrophic in the way early war battles are catastrophic, two forces operating with maximum aggression in a space filled with people who belong to neither and have no way to leave. The Twilight Guard operates in the margins. Civilian evacuation corridors established and held while the larger engagement moves around them. Safe routes through active combat zones mapped through the Force and relayed to aid organizations. Wounded treated from both sides, a deliberate choice and a deliberate signal. Anakin takes the direct engagement. Battle droids redirected from the main battle toward a refugee column, because Separatist commanders have decided that civilian movement is a tactical liability. He moves through them with both blades, the golden saber for work that requires precision, the dark saber for work that requires authority, the circuit between them complete and functioning in open combat for the first time. A war correspondent embedded with a Republic medical unit captures an image. She does not know what she has until she reviews it that evening. A young man in half Mandalorian armor, golden blade in one hand, dark saber in the other, standing between a column of Twi'lek families and a line of advancing droids. The light from both blades falls across the people behind him. The droids in front of him are already stopping. The image crosses the HoloNet the next morning. Within 2 days it is everywhere: relief organizations, military news services, Senate briefings, private communications between people who have been trying to name what they feel about this war, and have found, in one image, something that names it for them. Coruscant, the Chancellor's private office. A holographic conference with Dooku, who appears above the desk in quarter scale and full aristocratic composure. The Ryloth image sits on Palpatine's desk. He is loyal to the Duchess, Dooku says, not to the Republic, not to anyone we can threaten or leverage through institutional pressure. Palpatine studies the image. The blades. The children standing in the light behind them. He is loyal to individuals. That is both the greatest weakness and the greatest strength a person can have. Shall I dispatch an assassin? No. Palpatine sets the image down with the precise calm of a man who has spent 70 years solving problems at the scale where assassins are sometimes useful and sometimes catastrophically counterproductive. Kill him, and you create a martyr. The Mandalorians would declare war on whoever was responsible, and Mandalore united against us is a problem we cannot afford during the campaign's critical phase. Then what? We ensure that when the moment comes, there are enough clone battalions near Mandalore to take him and Kenobi in the first wave. A pause. He cannot be turned. He can only be removed. Dooku nods. The hologram closes. Palpatine looks at the image for another moment before filing it. He has been planning for the Chosen One since before Naboo, for rage, for loss, for the specific vulnerability of a powerful being who loves without limit. He planned for power and fear and every form of human appetite he has ever learned to recognize. He did not plan for that image. A man standing in the light of his own blades, between the powerful and the powerless, asking nothing from either side. He files it and moves on because the plan is too far advanced to alter. But the image stays with him in a way he does not examine closely, because examining it would require him to name something he has no framework for. And he has not survived this long by naming things he cannot control. 60 warriors from 12 traditional clans fill Satine's main hall. They came from across the Outer Rim, some to pledge loyalty to the Darksaber's wielder, some to test the legend, some because the Ryloth image made them feel something they haven't felt about Mandalore in years, and they wanted to be in the room where the source of it was standing. Anakin addresses them without notes and without theater. I'm not your leader. He says it plainly, as a fact rather than a disclaimer. I'm a man who is trying to do what the Force says is right, which is, stop people from dying when their deaths accomplish nothing. If that's a cause worth supporting, I welcome you. But understand this clearly: we take no side, except the side of those who cannot defend themselves. We answer to no political agenda, not the Republic's, not the Separatists, not anyone who walks through that door with a treaty in one hand and a different war in the other. Silence. Then the eldest clan representative, a woman of 80, who has watched 5 decades of Mandalorian politics produce smaller and smaller versions of the same catastrophe, raises her gauntlet and strikes it once against her chest plate. Deliberate, a beginning. One by one, around the hall, the others follow. The sound accumulates, it fills the room. It is not applause, and it is not submission. It is 60 warriors telling one man that they have heard him, and found him worth the cost. Anakin holds that for a moment. Then he nods once. The work continues. The morning is ordinary, in the way mornings are ordinary when the galaxy is mid-war, functionally stable within Mandalore's dome, chaotic beyond it, the kind of equilibrium that holds through discipline rather than peace. Anakin runs a maintenance check on the Twilight Guard's extraction ship's routine. Methodical. Work that doesn't require force sensitivity, just attention. 2 of the craft need motivator calibrations. He notes it and begins the work. Through Sundari's upper viewports, both moons of Mandalore are visible in the morning sky. He has looked at them every day for 10 years. They are close to belonging to him, in the way a place belongs to you, not like Tatooine's twin suns, carved into his nervous system before he knew what belonging meant, but close. He hears Obi-Wan before he sees him, not with his ears. With the Force a change in the quality of Obi-Wan's presence, something that was calm becoming not calm, the shift between those 2 states happening faster than Anakin has ever felt it happen in a person he knows well. He is moving toward the source before he has consciously decided to move. Obi-Wan stands in the corridor outside the operations center, with both hands flat against the wall and his eyes closed. Master, something is happening. The voice is controlled in the specific way that control is the only alternative to something much worse, something galactic, something the Force tells Anakin the rest. The golden crystal is a dual-frequency receiver. Its dark side component registers the mass dark side event with extraordinary clarity, not the edge of it, not the echo, but the full signal at close range. The Jedi are dying, not in combat, not in a battle that might be won or survived. They are being killed from behind, by people standing beside them, by hands they trusted, the trust itself becoming the mechanism of their deaths. Hundreds of signatures extinguishing. Then, hundreds more. Each one a distinct frequency in the Force, a person, a presence, a thing that was alive and specific and particular, and all of them going silent in the same window of minutes, the chord of 10,000 lives that was the Jedi Order contracting toward something that will soon not make sound at all. He stands in the corridor and holds it. The Force wants him to hold it, to be present for it, to not look away from what is happening, because what is happening is the reason they are standing here. Then the communications system registers a change. Clone frequencies near Mandalore's border, the units that have maintained professional neutrality through 3 years of parallel operations, going silent simultaneously. No sign-off, no transmission, 30 seconds of standard communication, and then nothing. Then their movement signatures begin registering on Mandalore's perimeter sensors. He's executing now, Anakin says. Yes, across everything. Everywhere, at the same time. Yes, they look at each other for one moment. Not for comfort, for calibration. For the specific acknowledgement of people who have known this moment was coming, and must now determine what it requires of them. We go now, Anakin says, before he thinks we're contained. Clone battalions breach Mandalore's perimeter through the eastern approach, and a secondary force through the northern agricultural ring. And the Mandalorian defensive forces engage with the full discipline of warriors who have spent 10 years coexisting tensely with the Republic's military and have apparently always understood this day was a possibility. Anakin and Obi-Wan fight the units specifically targeting their positions. This is the heaviest combat the audio drama will render. And it is heavy, not because of the danger, but because of what the danger is made of. The clones are not responsible. That is the fact that makes every exchange brutal, in a way that has nothing to do with the Force applied. The inhibitor chips have removed their agency entirely. These are men who, 3 minutes ago, were professionals with individual names and private assessments of the war and habits developed across specific years of specific experience. The chips have made them the instrument of their own victimization. They are the weapon and the victim simultaneously. And there is no way to fight that without grieving it. Obi-Wan fights almost entirely defensively. He deflects, redirects, disables targeting joints, weapons, propulsion systems, anything that removes a threat without ending the person behind it. His face is the face of a man doing something he will not forgive the galaxy for making necessary. His Soresu is technically flawless. He has never hated using it more. Anakin fights with the dark side accessible for the first time under real battlefield conditions. Cold, controlled, calibrated exactly enough force and never more. Not because restraint is easy, but because he has spent 2 years learning the difference between the dark side as a tool and the dark side as an appetite, and this is not the moment for appetite. He and Obi-Wan move through the engagement without triumph. There is nothing here to triumph over. These men deserved better than what their own government put in their skulls, and the fact of that does not go away simply because the engagement ends. The Mandalorian defensive forces hold the perimeter. The clone incursion is repelled. 6 casualties, 12 wounded, 17 clones disabled and given over to medical care. Satine receives the report with the steadiness of a head of state and the grief of a person who has spent a decade building something the galaxy keeps finding reasons to test. Minutes. That is all that can be spared. Obi-Wan finds Satine in the operations center, where she has been coordinating the defensive response. The room empties around them, people who recognize when a private moment is occurring and have the grace to make space for it without being asked. He takes both her hands. He does not give her a speech. A speech would be a way of filling time they don't have with words smaller than what they already know. He gives her one sentence. I love you, and I'm coming back. She looks at him. Her composure holds in the way it holds when it is costing something real to maintain it. You always know exactly the wrong thing to say to make me more afraid. I know. I'm sorry. A breath. Her hands tighten on his once. Then, go fix it. One moment of stillness between them, the kind that carries everything a longer moment would spend on words. Then he goes. The extraction ships are prepped. The Twilight Guard detachment staying on Mandalore has its orders. Anakin does a final pass through the operational log before boarding and finds nothing unexpected. What he finds, already filed 3 hours ago before the clone movements registered, before the Force signal, before any of it had a name, is a Twilight Guard protection order for the Lars Moisture Farm on Tatooine. A detachment, quietly arranged through the Guard's Outer Rim contact network. Nobody asked him. He didn't tell anyone. Just something he did when the border movement data first registered, and something in him understood what that data might eventually mean, and moved accordingly, without ceremony, without explanation, the way you do things that are simply obvious when you are paying the right kind of attention. Obi-Wan finds it in the operational log when the ship is already lifting, and he has a moment to look. He reads the entry. He closes the log. He says nothing. Some things don't require acknowledgement to be understood. The ship rises. Through the viewports, Sundari's dome catches the morning light and contracts as they climb that enormous monument to a world that couldn't heal itself, getting smaller the way all enormous things get smaller when you leave them behind. Both moons still pale in the daylight, the desert surface below them, rocky and wide. Through the Force, the Jedi massacre is still happening. It is an open wound in the Force's fabric, not a single event, but a sustained one, the Order dying in real time across 100 worlds simultaneously. Each death its own separate extinguishing, and the sum of all of them a weight the Force will carry for a very long time. It does not feel like history yet. It feels like now. It feels like the present tense of the worst thing that has happened in living memory, unfolding across a galaxy that mostly does not yet know it is occurring. They hold it. They do not insulate themselves from it or close their awareness against the weight. The Force wants them present witnesses, not because witnessing changes what is happening, but because what is happening deserves to be witnessed by people who know what it is and refuse to look away from knowing. When they reach the jump coordinates, Anakin speaks. How many? Obi-Wan is quiet for a moment. His voice, when he answers, is level in the way voices are level when the alternative is something that cannot be allowed to happen yet. Most of them. Possibly all of them. Silence. Long silence. The kind that holds more than words were built for. Anakin looks at the stars ahead, at the jump point, at what comes next. Then, we cannot fail. The ship, stars streak and collapse into the blue of hyperspace, that calm, impossible passage through the space between things carrying them toward Coruscant and the end of what has been building for 70 years, and the beginning of something that has no name yet, and whatever they are capable of being when everything they were trained for is tested against everything they have actually become. Neither of them speaks again for a long time. The blue of hyperspace holds them both. Calm as the Force is sometimes calm, not peaceful, but steady. Not without weight, but willing to carry it. Forward, the Jedi Temple is not burning. That is what makes it worse. Fire would be evidence of something that fought back, something that required force to overcome. What Anakin and Obi-Wan find when they move through the temple's corridors is quieter and older than fire. The residue of violence completed, the specific silence of a place that held thousands of years of accumulated light-side presence, and has had that presence evacuated in a single morning. The force around the building is a wound, not raw, already closing, already becoming the kind of scar that endures. Clone troopers move in pairs through the outer corridors, objectives already completed. Neither of them engages. The chips have done their work here. Fighting these men now would accomplish nothing except additional grief, and they cannot afford grief yet. Obi-Wan moves in silence. He was born into this institution in the way that people are born into things not from it, but shaped by it so early the distinction barely matters. These corridors are his childhood. The training rooms, the meditation gardens, the specific quality of light through these particular windows at this particular hour, all of it is his memory, layered across 2 decades of daily presence. The audio drama renders his grief through his footsteps and his breathing and the sounds of what surrounds them, because there are no words for this, and he knows it and does not reach for any. They find the council chamber. The bodies of masters have been arranged, not left where they fell, but placed, with the deliberate contempt of a victor making an argument about who had power over whom. Kit Fisto, Mace Windu, Agen Kolar, Sae Tiin, others whose faces Obi-Wan has known since childhood, positioned with inhuman precision, as if someone found the fact of their deaths worth organizing. The arrangement says, "Look at what I made of your best." Palpatine stands in the center of it, already composing himself into the narrative of victimhood he intends to deliver to the Senate within hours, the shocked Chancellor, who barely survived a Jedi coup. Dooku stands beside him, watching the door with the satisfaction of a man who has waited a long time for a morning like this one. Then, the door opens. Palpatine's political mask does not slip. It drops entirely, instantly, and what is underneath it is Sidious, old, cold, genuinely inhuman, in the way that 70 years of choosing power over everything else makes a person genuinely inhuman. He looks at Anakin with something that in another face would be surprise. In his, it becomes something more precise. Anakin. A beat. A recalibration. How extraordinary. I had genuinely hoped you were dead. I know. I have planned for every contingency. 20 years of planning. For every possible version of you. Then tell me what you planned for. Sidious gestures at Dooku, at the bodies, at the gutted institution surrounding them. For this. For a galaxy that does exactly what I tell it to do. His eyes find Anakin's with the flat certainty of a man who has never lost at the scale that matters. What are you prepared for? Both blades ignite, golden amber in the right hand, black crackle in the left. The 2 lights meet in the council chamber's smoke and make something that has no name yet. To end this, Dooku moves first. His Makashi is built for the initiative, for the strike that defines the terms before the opponent has finished reading the room. Obi-Wan is already in Ceresu Guard. They have never met across a blade before. They have, in a sense, always been connected master who trained master who trained master, and the combat carries that lineage in its texture, each man fighting the other side of everything they both came from. Dooku's taunt arrives between his second and third combinations. I trained Qui-Gon. Did you know that I warned him about the Order's failures? He didn't listen. He sent a ghost to do the convincing instead. It appears that worked. Obi-Wan redirects a thrust and steps into the space it opens. Qui-Gon's ghost saved more lives than your living self ever will. Dooku presses Makashi at its most precise, blade arcs economical and targeted, probing for the gap in a defense that has not shown one. He is one of the finest duelists alive. He is accustomed to finding the gap. He cannot find it. What he did not account for, Obi-Wan in this timeline is not a man hollowed by war. He did not spend a decade watching the people around him die in a conflict designed to destroy what he loved. He spent a decade building something he chose, alongside people he loves, in service of a purpose that is his own. He is not fighting to survive. He is fighting for something, and Seresu practiced by someone fighting for something is a different instrument from Seresu practiced by someone fighting against loss. The wall does not break, the wall learns. Dooku overreaches on a high-line. Makashi flourished the strike that has ended 100 duels, performed so many thousands of times it has become reflex, rather than decision. Obi-Wan reads it 3 movements before it arrives. He redirects and drives forward, and the blue blade comes to rest at Dooku's throat. Drop it. Surrender. Dooku looks at him. He calculates. He has underestimated every person in this room this morning, and he is sufficiently wise to recognize that underestimating the same people repeatedly is a pattern rather than coincidence. The curved lightsaber falls. Sidious does not test. He has watched Anakin for 20 years, and he understands, in the first seconds of engagement, that testing will cost him time he no longer has. He drops the political smoothness. Entirely it falls away to reveal something older and colder and genuinely inhuman. The specific inhumanity of a being who has not needed to feel anything that did not serve a purpose in a very long time. Between the opening exchanges, he tells Anakin what he wants him to know, that he observed every path Anakin took and adapted to each. That the golden crystal was a complication, not a barrier. That leaving the Order was the one contingency he miscalculated and has spent a decade accounting for. You were supposed to be my weapon. The voice carries no anger. Only the flat precision of a strategist identifying where a model diverged from its output. Instead, you became something I don't have a name for. Good. Anakin turns a force crush and redirects its momentum into a forward step. Names give you too much credit for understanding something. Then, Sidious stops talking and commits everything. The lightning that comes down is not a technique. It is a resource, 60 years of dark side cultivation released from both hands simultaneously. The full inventory of a man who built power at civilizational scale and is watching it dissolve. The Force itself strains under the load. At this scale it would end any Jedi in recorded history. Any Sith. Any Force user ever documented, because no documented Force user has survived what is being directed at Anakin Skywalker in this moment. Anakin raises the darksaber. The dark crystal accepts the lightning, not deflects, accepts dark side energy absorbed into dark frequency the way a vessel accepts water, filling past its normal operating parameters, the white electric crackle at its edges becoming something larger and less controlled, and Anakin holds it with everything Vela Ordo's training gave him, not escaping, not surrendering. Present with the full weight of it, unbroken by it, the golden blade rises in his right hand. One breath, finding the standing wave, the equilibrium, the specific position between the frequencies that the crystal in his right hand has occupied since Ilum, since a 10-year-old boy stood in a cracking ice cave and refused the premise of a false choice. The circuit closes between gold and black, between the blade that absorbs and the blade that holds balance, between what was taken in and what must now be returned. He redirects. Sidious's own power comes back along its own path, amplified through the golden crystal's equilibrium and returned at the scale it was sent, and it takes him in the chest and drives him across the council chamber. He is not destroyed. He is burning from the inside, from the source of everything he built, and for the first time in 70 years of patient, meticulous, unbroken planning, Darth Sidious is afraid. Not calculating around fear. Not performing it. Actually, genuinely afraid. Because the thing standing before him is something he built toward for 7 decades, and something he never once imagined, and those two things being the same person, was never in any version of the plan. He switches to raw force projection telekinetics, environment, the desperate inventory of the most powerful dark side practitioner alive, whose primary weapon has just been turned against him. Masonry from the ceiling. Anything, everything, Anakin moves through it. Not easily this costs him, opens cuts across his shoulders and arms. Drops him to one knee when a section of ceiling comes down hard enough to matter, runs him on training and will when everything else has been spent. But he moves through it. Because the dark side is not foreign to him, and the light side is not foreign to him, and Sidious has spent 70 years mastering one frequency, while Anakin spent 12 years learning to carry both simultaneously. And the distance between those two approaches is the distance between this moment and every other version of this moment that Sidious planned for. The final moment. Sidious on his knees. The council chamber, quiet around them. The marble, bloodied and broken. The high windows letting in the first gray of dawn. He offers the galaxy power, legacy. The full scope of everything 70 years of work has built with the specific confidence of a man who has made this offer before and always found it accepted. Look at what you are. Why would you kneel to anything less? Anakin looks at him. His voice is quiet and entirely without ceremony. I don't kneel, and I'm not here for what you're offering. The darksaber moves, and Darth Sidious, the shadow behind the Republic, the end of the Sith rule of two, the culmination of 1,000 years of patient and meticulous darkness is gone. Silence, long silence. The council chamber holds it, and the Force holds it, and the thing that has been pulling at the Force from beneath Coruscant's surface for longer than the current order existed simply stops. The cessation registers the way the ending of a chronic pain registers. You notice, with the sensation of not feeling it, how long you have been feeling it without knowing it was there. Then, sound. From the temple's hidden spaces, from sealed meditation rooms, from passages beneath the training floors, Jedi emerging. Not many. Enough, moving toward what they feel in the Force, which is the cessation of a darkness they were living inside without a name for it. Obi-Wan's footsteps cross the marble. His hand comes to rest on Anakin's shoulder. No words. There are no words for this that would not be smaller than it. The Force, for the first time in years, exhales. Through the council chamber's high windows, Coruscant at dawn. The light coming in from the east, clean and direct, falling across the marble without shadow, a sun with nothing behind it. The hours following Sidious's death are not triumphant, they are operational. The galaxy does not know yet what happened in the Jedi Temple. What it knows is that the Force shifted, felt by every Force sensitive alive, registered as a lifting or a clearing, or simply an absence that had been present so long it became the baseline, and that clone troopers across 1,000 worlds received a countermanding order simultaneously. Order 65, the contingency that allows removal of a Supreme Chancellor determined to be acting against the Republic's democratic foundations. Activated through emergency Senate authorization initiated by Bail Organa, and backed by the evidence, Obi-Wan transmits from the Temple's own security archives recordings, communications, financial records. 60 years of a Sith's meticulous documentation of his own methods preserved in the institution he intended to destroy. The Senate sessions that follow are emergency sessions in every sense. No prepared remarks, no agenda constructed over weeks of careful positioning. Bail Organa stands before them and tells the truth, not a curated version of it, but the full architecture of what Palpatine was, what he built, what Order 66 was designed to accomplish, and what it accomplished before it was stopped. He delivers it with evidence, and with composure, and with the deliberate steady calm of a man who understands that how a republic responds to its worst moment determines whether it remains a republic afterward. The Senate is shaken. The Senate survived. Bail Organa is appointed acting chancellor by emergency vote, the correct decision, which most of the chamber understands and fewer of them say publicly. Count Dooku is tried. Bail argues successfully that a living Sith apprentice capable of testifying to 60 years of Sidious's methods is more useful than a dead one who becomes a martyr for whatever remains of the separatist leadership. Dooku receives a life sentence. He accepts it with the aristocratic composure of a man who has understood, since Obi-Wan's blade touched his throat in the council chamber, that he underestimated everything in that room and is now living inside the consequence of that pattern. He is left with the truth of what he became, stripped of power and cause, and the philosophy that gave his choices meaning. It is, arguably, the harder sentence. The Republic survives. The Empire is never named. 47 Jedi survived. They come to Coruscant in ones and twos over the following weeks from remote postings, from hiding, from the missions that took them far enough from the first wave to outrun it by hours or geographic chance. Among them, Yoda, who had killed the clone troopers assigned to execute him on Kashyyyk, before they could raise their weapons. His force sensitivity had given him half a heartbeat of warning, and half a heartbeat was more than enough. He survived. He did not come to Coruscant. He sent no message, and made no contact, and his answer to the question of what came next arrived as Yoda's most significant communications always did, as a felt thing transmitted through the Force, a permission given and a path released. He had chosen exile. Whatever he sought there, he sought it alone, and neither Anakin nor Obi-Wan tried to change that. The others arrive at the temple with the specific quality of people who have escaped something enormous and are not yet certain what the escape means. They look to Anakin and Obi-Wan as the only authority left standing. Anakin gathers them. He tells them the answer carefully, with full acknowledgement of its weight. The Order will not be rebuilt. He waits for the room to hold that. Then, the Order failed. Not because it was weak, it was the most powerful collective of Force users in recorded history. It failed because it was brittle. It told people how to feel, who to love, how to exist, and called that discipline. It built a system where the closer you came to power, the more isolated from your own humanity you became. The very thing that makes a Force user most dangerous, their attachment to the living world, was treated as a defect to be corrected. And the galaxy paid for that decision. Obi-Wan speaks from the back of the room, without theater. We spent 30 years training warriors to suppress everything that makes them human, and then wondered why the Sith could turn them with a single well-placed promise of belonging. Not all of them accept this. Several leave intending to rebuild elsewhere, on their own terms, carrying what they can from the wreckage. Anakin and Obi-Wan do not stop them. The Force is large enough for different answers to the same question. It always has been. Not on Coruscant. Not in the Temple. Concordia, the compound that was pre-Visla's stronghold, Death Watch's operational center, where the old warrior darkness organized itself into faction and purpose, has been empty since the battle 4 years ago. Satine offered it. The symbolism was her idea. The stronghold of the darkness Anakin defeated becomes the home of the balance he embodies. The Darksaber was born from Mandalore's history. The New Order will be built at the intersection of that history and everything that has grown alongside it. Anakin speaks the 5 principles in the main hall, where new banners hang alongside Mandalorian crests, where the rough stone walls have been cleaned and kept honest about what they were before they became this. 1. Force sensitivity is not a calling above life. It is a gift within it. Members of this order may love, attach, belong, and call those things strength rather than weakness. 2. Both frequencies of the Force are studied, understood, and respected. Not the Sith's dark side, not domination or corruption, but the Force's natural darkness, grief, survival, the world as it is rather than as we wish it. We do not fear half of existence. 3. Service is chosen, not imposed. No child will be recruited and raised in isolation from the world they're meant to protect. All members come as adults, with full lives already begun. 4. Mastery is personal, not hierarchical. We do not rank each other. We only ask, what do you know, and what are you still learning? 5. Balance means holding all of it, the light and the dark, the joy and the grief, the love and the loss, without being defined by any single part. The Force is not a religion. It is a relationship. Vela Ordo, 58 years old and entirely present, accepts membership with a grunt, and the observation that she has been doing most of this for a decade anyway, and would appreciate it if the formal documentation reflected that. Nobody argues. Force-sensitive individuals who were never found by the old order because they were born in the wrong coordinates begin arriving over the following months. They come carrying questions rather than seeking answers. That is exactly correct. Satine arrives on Concordia with the full Mandalorian diplomatic delegation. She enters the main hall and finds what has been made of it: Death Watch's war chamber hung with new banners, Jedi survivors and Mandalorian warriors sharing a table with the careful ease of people who have decided that sharing a table is more useful than everything that made it difficult. She stands at the threshold. She allows herself, briefly and completely, to cry not for the delegation behind her, but for herself, in the private way that people cry when something they worked toward for a very long time has actually arrived. Then, she straightens. She surveys the East Wing with the eye of a head of state evaluating infrastructure. The acoustics in this hall are terrible. We'll need to rebuild the East Wing. Nobody argues. Obi-Wan finds her alone afterward in the Concordia garden, a small thing, planted in the last months, defiant in the moon's rocky soil, already establishing itself with the stubbornness that living things develop in difficult ground. He stands beside her for a moment. He has been careful about this conversation for 20 years. He decides to stop being careful. I intend to stay on Mandalore. I would like that to be with you. She looks at him with the patience of a woman who has been waiting 20 years for this specific sentence to be said in direct language, rather than implication. Are you asking me if I want to be with you? Yes, that's essentially what I'm asking. Ask properly. He does. She says yes. Shmi arrives escorted by the Twilight Guard detachment Anakin posted 3 months ago before Coruscant, before any of it had a name, filed quietly in an operational log that Obi-Wan found and said nothing about. She and Anakin walked together through Concordia's landscape, harsh, rocky, wide open to the same infinite sky she raised him under on Tatooine. Different stars visible from here. The same darkness between them. She tells him she's proud of him. He says he doesn't know if he's done enough. She considers this the way she considers things that matter fully, without rushing. She gives him the truest thing she knows. You freed yourself. That was always going to be the hardest part. Everything else was just persistence. He is quiet for a long time. They walk. The stars appear as the light goes. Padam Amidala arrives officially, representing the Senate's recognition of the Twilight Order. She is 27 years old, brilliant, fierce, the version of herself that exists when a war designed to consume her never quite happened, unburdened by secret grief and secret children and the grinding weight of a marriage that had to be hidden from everyone who mattered. She and Anakin meet in Concordia's receiving hall, two people who knew each other as children and have been shaped by entirely different decades since. She looks at him the way she looks at everything directly, without performing the looking. You haven't changed as much as I expected. You've changed more than I expected. And all of it in a better direction. That's a very smooth thing to say. I had 12 years and several Mandalorian women to teach me that saying exactly what you mean is the only approach that actually works. A pause. She decides something in it. The Senate wants to formally recognize the Twilight Order. I've been asked to negotiate the terms. That's going to take several meetings. I anticipate so. Good. Late evening on Concordia. The courtyard rough stone, new banners moving in the wind that comes down from the higher rock formations. Mandalore visible overhead, enormous and pale, the twin moons just clearing the horizon. 5 people, Anakin, Obi-Wan, Satine, Shmi, Padam present together, in the way that only people who have survived enormous things can simply be present without performance, without the need to fill the quiet with proof that everything is all right. Anakin sits with both blades across his knees. He ignites neither. He looks up at the stars. He stared at stars from slave quarters at age 9 and wanted to be among them with the desperate wanting of a child who understands that the distance between where he is and where he could be is enormous, and has not yet learned whether it is crossable. He is among them now. The prophecy was not wrong. He brought balance, but not by destroying the darkness, not by becoming it, not by dying for it. He brought balance by learning, in the most difficult and human way imaginable, to hold both the light and the dark without flinching, without surrendering, without becoming either. The Jedi Order called this impossible. The Sith called it weakness. The Force called it home. And in the end, in the quiet of Concordia's courtyard, with the people he loved around him and the stars above him and the weight of the world finally distributed across hands that had chosen to hold it, Anakin Skywalker called it the beginning. Let us know what you'd like to see next. The end.